Hi, and welcome to Talking Realty, the go-to podcast for home sellers looking to make more money, save time, and avoid headaches. Whether you're selling a flip, a new build, an income property, or the place you call home, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Glen Whitten, a 20-year broker and founder of the Ohio Property Group, where we're all about turning hands-on knowledge into seller success stories. Whether you're in Ohio or not, you should get our free monthly newsletter. This thing is jam-packed with strategies, tools, checklists, and a treasure trove of seller resources, all crafted to boost your selling savvy, no matter where you are. Head over to talkingrealty.com to get your hands on these gems. And don't forget, subscribe right here to Talking Realty so you never miss a thing. Now, let's say hi to Ryan Phillips. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Talking Realty. Today, we're thrilled to have Ryan Phillips join us. Ryan is not just any expert in the title industry. He's a seasoned professional with almost 30 years of experience. Throughout his career, Ryan has worked his way up by mastering several roles, from being an escrow officer to a processor, taking on managerial and account executive positions, to finally owning his own place. What sets Ryan apart is his extensive experience in handling a wide range of transactions. We're talking everything from standard purchases to complex commercial refinances. What's even more impressive is that he's personally closed over 4,000 real estate transactions, which should tell you all you need to know about his experience and his expertise. But it's not just about the numbers. As you know, one of my 3 S's for judging a title company is service. I have personally worked with Ryan and can assure you that his take on service is not just talk. He and his team have navigated my sellers through some pretty tricky waters. Today, he's here to talk about some of the ways the right title company can make all the difference in your home sale. So let's dive in and learn from the best in the business. Welcome, Ryan. Thanks. So thanks for coming on today. Everything good? Everything settled? Your office is under control down there?
Office is under control. We're just sitting here with the marketing team just left. So we're just beating up the airwaves for business.
Super fantastic. Well, as we heard in the intro, you've been at this a long time. So do me a favor and just, talk about where you are, how you got here, start wherever you like, and wind up where we are now.
Okay. Well, I like to tell people that first I did get my license, my real estate license, when I was 19, because I had a dad who's been a broker since the 60s
Right.
in the German Village area in Columbus. And I did that for a few years, and just a couple years actually, and I quickly realized that dealing with the emotional train wrecks of buyers and sellers that they can be sometimes was not for me. I'll take care of them at the closing table, but I didn't want to hold their hand through that whole process. I thought I'd leave that up to you realtors with thicker skin. And so I started a summer job at a title company, and off I went. That was in 1994.
So that brings us up to today. So how's business? How are things going over there at Associates?
Everything's going well. It's would I like to be doing more business? Of course, but I think I join everyone in our industry when it's just down a little bit right now, and that's when you kind of got to get after it, find new avenues, new ways to get business, and it seems to be working. So it's I can't complain.
Not at all. So you mentioned your dad was a realtor. So you really was he a realtor like your whole life, or in and out, or how did that go?
Grandpa was a realtor, and then my dad was a realtor. He started selling real estate back when he was a bartender at Plank's Beer Garden in German Village, and he bought his first house when he was bartending there, $25 down, $25 a month. It was a 7-bedroom boarding house, and he kind of took that and ran with it. And then he's been selling he was selling real estate. He did a deal few weeks before he passed away, actually. So he never stopped doing it. He didn't really need to. He kind of just did what came across his lap there towards the end, or at least actually for the last 20 years. But it set him up comfortably, and I kind of followed in his footsteps in the real estate industry, but didn't want to be an agent. I again leave that up to the thick-skinned folk.
So you prefer the vacuum, perfect, pristine isolation of the title office. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's right. I love to deal with I love to deal with them at the tail end. The happy
Yeah.
part it seems to be the best place to be when they're here for a closing, when they get to the
Yeah.
table, because you and I know how many roller coaster rides they go on with lenders or realtors or inspections or you
Right.
name it prior to getting to the closing
Yeah.
table.
So it sounds like you kind of hit your stride pretty early. Did you take any weird detours or anything in life that kind of looked like it was really out of place, but then maybe ended up being, fortunate?
Uh, no, I mean, I even went for that other company. I had moved to Cleveland and ran an office up there for about, I worked at the office for about a year. Then I
Mm-hmm.
ran it for about 3 years before I moved back to
Yeah.
Columbus. And I can really say, for someone that just graduated high school, I didn't go to
Mm-hmm.
college. But I saw that my dad was the same way. That as long as you work hard and you're trustworthy and you learn your trade, you can do very well in the real estate industry, whether it be selling, buying, or title, or other aspects, appraisal or whatever it might be. It's a great industry to be in. And what industry can you get into that affects so many people's lives, like
Right.
ours? Buying, selling houses, it's their biggest investment of their life, and it's where they're going to put their family, or whatever it might be, or where they're going to retire to. So there's a lot of things behind it that make it a great industry to be in.
Well, I certainly second that. Uh, you've been in this if my remedial math is close, it sounds like you've been at this about 30 years. So
In November of it'll be
30
30
years.
years.
So look, in this day and age, most people don't stick with the same job for very long, and a lot of them have multiple careers. So what in the world gets you out of bed every day to go do title work and be passionate for this? You'd have to be to do it for this long.
Well, most mornings I feel a little tinge of excitement. I can't say I feel like I'm going to the circus or whatever, but I have a little excitement of what's today going to bring. And I've learned that in this business, I learn something new almost
Yeah.
every day now. Still, it's every deal is different. No two deals are exactly the same. There's always small parts or small moving parts that are going to
Yeah.
be different.
Well, again, I'm right there with you. I've been at this for a very, very long time. So, look, let's just fast forward a little bit. Can you just kind of give me an overview? What does a title company do? What's their role when I'm selling a home? Um, and honestly, as a home seller, why should I care? So, just give me the overview.
Well, the best way I can explain a title company is if a real estate transaction is a wagon wheel, we're the center hub of that wagon wheel. Everyone's information flows through us. We facilitate the money, we facilitate the closing, and all aspects of the deal come together at the title company. So it's from start to finish. You're going to go out, you're going to list that house, you're going to get a contract on that house. From there, we're kind of going to take over, and we're going to make sure that everyone gets paid through the transaction. We're going to make sure that the title is clear on a transaction. We're going to make sure it's all done properly, and that we're turning over this house to the new buyer as a fresh slate.
So, I also hear the term escrow thrown around, and I don't know if that's state specific, but is there a big difference between when people say title versus escrow? Am I getting those confused?
No, it is two different things. And some states do separate. It's a separate company or a separate license that you do have to have. But escrow is the handling of the funds.
Okay.
Title is to ensure that the title insurance policy on the property is good.
Got it. Actually,
So
thank you.
it's two different parts of it. But in Ohio, we put them together under one company. If you look at places like California, there's a title license and an escrow license. So there's two different companies doing that part of the deal. So we're doing it all together here in Ohio.
Leave it to California, and I'll leave it right there. So once a deal goes under contract, from the listing agent side, we send everything over to you and the lender. What does it look like from there? Because to be honest, we monitor it, but we're not hands-on in your office. I don't see what goes on. What happens after we open it up?
The purchase contract comes in. My order entry team puts all the specifics from that contract into our system: price, address, parties involved, everything, any other things on there that might need to be taken care of. So we're going to put it in there, and then with the information that you've provided us, we're going to start reaching out to buyers, sellers, lenders, anyone else that we need to talk to, and get the deal organized. Make sure we get all the information that we need from those parties, and then proceed with our process of getting the deal to the table. So a lot of times it would, if there's no lender involved, it does simplify things. We all know that.
Yeah.
But if there's a lender involved, I need to know what's the loan amount on that purchase? What's the loan number? What's their mortgagee clause? Who's that lender's policy of title insurance that I'm going to issue? Who am I issuing that to? So it's just taking all the information, throwing it in where we need it in our system, and then running off with it.
Got it. When you do the title search and even recording the deeds and stuff, do you actually send people to the courthouse? I know 100 years ago they did, but is that how it works today?
Very rarely. Most of it, almost all of it can be done online. There's 88 counties in Ohio, and I think we're down to 4 that will not allow us to e-record documents. Okay. So for the most part, I can take your scans and I can send those off for recording, not needing the old original anymore and taking it down there and walking it through the auditor and then walking it through the recorder's office and all that's time, it's that giant waste of time. But as far as the searches go, with how many counties are now fully online, whether it be the recorder, the clerk of courts, auditor, everyone involved with real estate at the county level, most of them are online, so I can find most of what I need through a search on the computer.
Got it. That's good to know. Do you have to be an attorney to do this, or how are attorneys involved?
You do not have to be an attorney. It is a license. I hold what they call a marketing license for Associates Title. Patrick Craycraft, my partner, he has our title license. So as far as the state of Ohio goes, all the licensing for us to issue a title insurance policy are through Patrick. He's not an attorney either. We do not need an attorney to do what we do, but they're a nice pet to have, so that's why we have one on staff. So we use the attorney that we have here to prepare our legal documents, to review anything kind of goofy that comes up. My attorney has been doing this for a long, long time, and he is very familiar with real estate law, and I don't know if there's many around that know more than him about what it is we do and how effective he is at getting deals taken care of or getting a solution for us to get a deal closed.
It's like your secret weapon.
It is. And I know companies that use like an outside attorney or, and they have to send this information to the attorney and the attorney's got a bunch of questions or whatever. My attorney doesn't have questions. He goes out and gets the information if he needs something. He's not asking all these questions. He's fixing it. And he's come back saying, hey, you guys need to make sure you're doing this part this way. So that's a valuable resource to have.
Definitely. And you got an attorney with a client of one, so you're always on top of the list.
That's right. That's right.
So did COVID change how you do business much, or was it pretty much business as usual?
It changed a lot of things that there was. We do a lot of mobile closings. First, I'll give a little snippet of what we do. A lot of mobile closings. Yeah. A very small proportion of our closings happen in the office these days. So during COVID, I had these mobile closers running around. They had no traffic. They were getting where they were going in a hurry. And then also, no one else had anything to do. So it was just kind of like, yeah, we'll be here. Whenever you show up, we're here. So it made that part easy. That was kind of the goofy part of it. But as far as how industry went, I think it kind of shoved us just a little bit further towards the online signings, like the RON, the remote online notaries that you're starting to see more and more of. We almost do probably 45% of our sellers are done completely online. Where they don't come into an office. We don't send a notary to them. They sit here and talk on the computer like you and I are right now with the notary. And then it kind of progressed to, cash buyers are doing just like a DocuSign or a .loop for the buyer documents. So, if I don't need anything notarized on there, it makes it even easier. The one thing that I wish would have happened is that if more lenders would have signed on with the remote online notary. There's a handful, but as far as the ones that we deal with on a regular basis, there's only 3 or 4 that will take a closing that's completely done online. I think the rest of them may just be so scared that they're not going to be able to sell that paper without those original signatures on them that they still make us do it the dinosaur way.
I think we saw that industry wide. I mean, so much that we was off limits, no, you got to do that in person. You got to, COVID came along and all of a sudden we couldn't do it in person. So we got to find another way. And to your point, I feel strongly that, we see the wave headed that way. My company, as you know, is entirely virtual. So, but we We were virtual before virtual was cool. I just want to point that out.
Yes, you
So
were.
I remember my first closings were sitting in a conference room for what seemed like days, watching a buyer. Those are roundtable closings. You're saying that those are now in the minority, or are they in the vast minority?
Roundtables, buyers and
Yes.
sellers being there. That I think we did one last month out of
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
how many purchase
Okay.
closings, 190,
Yeah.
185, something
Yeah.
like that. I think we did one, and that was because it was a FISBO, and they were already
Family.
affiliate. They,
Right.
they knew each other. They wasn't even family. They were kind of friends or whatever. But that was the only one we did last month, and there's too many things that could create some animosity through the process of a closing anymore. Let's say that that inspection gets beat up and the seller stands their ground. Well, then don't buy it, or whatever. I'm not fixing anything. And then the buyer's kind of, then you get them all together. There's a little bit of a powder keg there that you might be lighting a fuse on if you put them in the same room together. So I don't even ask people to do it anymore.
We have a whole series of truths in the office, and one of them is the love peaks during the offer and fades all the way to the closing table.
That is so true.
And if you don't have enough in the tank, you may not make it across the finish line. So we're very much aware that camaraderie, they all felt the warm fuzzies during the offer. Very, very often is more of a contentious relationship by the finish line. But yeah, so then most of them are either done through either remote online notary. Can you tell me about that? If I'm a seller, what does that look like for me?
So you log in to a site that we use. It goes through our Qualia software. And then you verify your identity. There's various steps, driver's license and social security number, things like that. They're verifying their identity, who they are, so the notary can notarize their signature at that point. And then the documents are popping up on the screen, and the buyer, seller, whoever it is signing them right there. The notary is clicking their part to notarize them. And it's very much like what we're doing here, except off to the right would be the documents.
Got it.
And so it's kind of like a screen share that you would see in a lot of meetings and Zoom meetings and things like that.
How tech savvy does the seller has to be, or do they have to have special equipment or software or anything to do this?
No, they do not. They can do it on their phone. They can do it on their smartphone. So they do not even need a computer to do it. Every once in a while, we'll just see that some people just getting their ID verified is sometimes can be a little bit of a hiccup. But other than that, it can be done right on their phone while they're driving down the road.
Hey, now,
I don't recommend it.
Ryan, I'm rapidly creeping into that older generation, so watch it. And my kids have been reminding me very recently. My AARP magazine shows up, and then I got to hear about it. So the option, if they don't want to do the remote online, is to have a person driving around. You mentioned during COVID they were zigzagging the state. So these are notaries.
Yep, all over
that you hire and send them out with the docs.
Yep. I have some on staff, and then when we overflow, I have a stable of contract notaries that'll go out and take care of them for me. And then also, some people still just love to come to our office, so I still get to do a good amount of closings because if it's scheduled in my office, chances are I'm going to close it myself.
Got it. And for those, the ones that are doing the live notary away from the office, any restrictions on that? They can meet like at Bob Evans. They can. In their house, their work, wherever?
I did that for a lot of years myself. I have closed everywhere you can think of. Marion Correctional Facility to McDonald's to you name it. The hood of a car, whatever. And that's what they do now too. There's no specifics on where they're going to close.
Okay. Well, thank you for that little trip down there. I hope that was interesting. So moving on, one of the questions I get there's two questions I get a lot. I'll reserve the other one. But the one I get most often is, what is title insurance, and what's going on with that whole discussion? And I know there's multiple kinds. Without getting too deep in the weeds, can you kind of give me the overview of title insurance? Because I know that's a big part of the discussion.
Okay, we'll talk about transactions kind of specific to you. It's usually an owner's policy of title insurance. So I'm doing my title search on the property, making sure all my ducks are in a row, that I am going to be able to guarantee that buyer is getting a property that no one else has a claim to, whether it be the taxes at the treasurer or some other mortgage company or some kind of judgment that the seller may have had against them. The list goes on and on and on of who that could be. I am guaranteeing that buyer can have peace of mind that no one else has a claim to the property that they're about to buy.
So in other words, yeah, that's what insurance is for, right? You buy it, you hope you never need it, but if you need it, thank goodness it's there. So if somebody comes along and says, "Hey, I'm the long lost grandson of the guy who sold it. I get a piece of this because for whatever reason I feel like I'm entitled." What happens? How do we engage?
So I'm going to go search the court records. I'm going to see, like, hey, I see where your grandpa himself deeded the property to the next buyer.
Right.
So tell me where you fit into you being his grandson, that you are entitled to a piece of that property. So it's going to be them trying to present evidence to us that you may end up in court or whatever, but nonetheless, I'm going to be able to look back and, immediately if something like that would come along, I'm going to be able to look back like, ooh, if I missed something and there wasn't marital status on there, or what happened to grandpa's wife, what happened to grandma? Okay, now you might have a problem because maybe he's really saying that he has a claim on this property through grandma, then his dad, and then him, or whatever it might be.
But if I bought the property or I sold the property, what's my involvement at that point if there's title insurance?
You're out. I'm here to handle everything that you had against the property, whether it was good, bad, ugly, whatever. So as the seller, you're out. You don't do a title insurance policy. You don't go through a title company. Let's just say, you got some legal form online. You went and made the deed yourself. Then you handed the seller, Bob, the check and walked away. All right, I got the property. Well, whatever Bob did on that property, you're stuck with it. So now you have a title company. We are title agents, just like, your local Progressive agent or whatever, your independent insurance agent. I underwrite for 3 different companies, and these are companies with billions and billions in assets. So you have that guarantee behind what I'm writing you, that there's big money behind it to guarantee that we did it correctly.
So in other words, if something pops up, I may not even know about it as the consumer, and I certainly don't have to worry about it because it's covered. Got it.
It's covered. We are covering it, and if it's something you should be paying, well, it's going to be on your settlement statement, and we're going to pay it out of your proceeds. You're only going to get what's left after we handle all the liens and taxes and water bills and whatever else is on there. You'll get what's left, and then that buyer can take peace of mind that we've cleared everything on that property. And if we didn't, they got a nice title insurance policy to cover any loss they might incur.
So a lot of times in Ohio, there's the one, depending on where we are in the state, because like you, we cover all 88 counties, and various purchase agreements have different language. If a seller by contract or by negotiation has to pay for the buyer's title insurance, some of my sellers get a little bit antsy about that. Like, why am I buying an insurance policy for this person? Do they get any residual coverage? Is there any benefit to my sellers in that situation?
No benefit to your sellers, except for it makes the property that much more appealing. The buyers did an inspection. They want to guarantee that the property wasn't, falling down. Why not guarantee that one of the biggest things that could come along and wipe out your investment in that property is, an old lien or an old heir or something along those lines? I'm guaranteeing that that's not going to happen. So I'm right there with everyone else in the process of buying and selling a home to guarantee peace of mind to that new buyer.
Which then extends to me, the seller, because I don't have to hear about it either. Because we all know,
That's right.
To your point earlier, if there's a physical problem with the property, let's say they did inspections or didn't do inspections, whatever, it's closed, all sales are final, as we know. And then 3 months later, a problem shows up. I will almost guarantee you 9 times out of 10, that buyer is going to reach out to us because we represented the seller, and they're going to want to talk about it. So I could see maybe where a seller would also get some of that peace of mind, whether they paid for it, the buyer paid for it, whoever. If there's title insurance in play, that does kind of benefit everybody at the virtual table.
Yeah, they're all buyers, sellers, lenders, realtors. Everyone's coming back to me when something like that happens.
Very good. Let's say I buy a property and then I pass on your fabulous insurance. And then, I don't know, I read a story in the Wall Street Journal 6 months later and I wake up in sweats like, oh my gosh, I should have bought that insurance. Is it too late?
No, there's, like you mentioned a little bit ago, that there's different ways of doing things in different markets in Ohio. Down in Southwest Ohio, Cincy market, let's call it that area, there's not always an owner's policy purchased for people. Whether it be their realtor or their lender or someone that shouldn't have told them not to buy it. But They sometimes do, and then all of a sudden there's an issue, and you didn't get a title insurance policy, and that the title company didn't pay the water bill or the second mortgage, or I don't know what. There could be again, that list is long, that now they've got no one to go back to because they didn't get that policy. So now we have a form, like, the last one we did was a refi, probably maybe about a year ago. So we walk in and say, all right, hey, we did a title search on the property to do all this, and you probably didn't, I can tell that you didn't get a title insurance policy. There's nothing protecting you against something that could come up from the past on your property. But I have this form right here to where I'll sell you a policy right now. And they wrote the check, and they paid the difference between the owner's policy and the lender's policy that they were already
So is that something all title companies do? I mean, I know you can't speak for the whole world, but is that something that some do and some don't, or is this standard?
Some do and
Okay.
some don't, and it's kind of market
Okay.
specific. Here in Central Ohio, 9 times out of 10, if your deal went through a realtor, and it's actually more than nine
Yeah.
times out of 10, I mean, it's
Yeah.
95 times out of 100. If a deal went through a realtor through normal channels, you're going to have a title insurance
Got it.
policy.
So speaking of differences from one title company to the next, can we talk about title company fees? Because I know they're not all the same,
Absolutely.
right? I mean, some of them are, but some of them
Absolutely.
aren't. Can you break that down?
All right, here's what it is. People, and I get realtors and say, well, title companies charge the same, don't they? Because they don't know that the only part of it that's regulated, other than the closing protection letter, but that's a small piece, is the title insurance premium. It's regulated by the state. There's various discounts that can be given to it. If you got a policy within the last 10 years already, if you bought the home or whatever. But they get you on the fees, like the closing fee, the wire fee, the binder fee, the title exam fee, the junkety junk fee, and the list is getting longer by the minute.
Yeah,
there's kind of data retention, and blah blah service fee, and so on and so forth, to where that's where the difference is in costs. We are all regulated by the state on the title premium, but we can charge whatever the heck else we want after that,
or not,
or charge less. And now it has to be within reason. If you start charging crazy fees, Department of Insurance is going to start asking questions. But nevertheless, if there's a $5,000-$8,000 swing between what I'm charging and what the company next door is charging, there's nothing you can do about it. That's where other companies will kind of gouge you, is the fees that are above and beyond title insurance.
I'm guilty. 100 years ago when I started, I thought the same thing. I really did. I put no thought whatsoever into the title slide. I just let everybody else decide. And it wasn't until I was probably a few years in before I started really reading settlement statements with that filter on and realizing, holy smokes, some of these are really cool and some are terrible. So I became very hands-on with the title selection a long time ago. But so I guess that
buyers and sellers should shop for themselves. They should shop around. I would recommend it, whether buying, selling, refinancing, whatever. Shop those other title companies and see. We are issuing the same product. Service being what it should be, wouldn't you always choose the lower cost for the same product?
Yeah, actually, that's, there's probably...
If service is what it's supposed to be.
And, I know from working with you in the past, data security is a very hot topic for you, and it's high on your priority list. Is that something the state tells you exactly how you have to behave, or are there varying degrees of security because, let's face it, what you mentioned, the hub and spoke, right? Well, that's an awful lot of spokes of information, and some of it is a little bit sensitive, like, my bank account number, I don't know. And so I know every year, I'm still astounded after all these years, every year I intercept it by accident. I get 3 or 4 emails a year with somebody's information that I just don't want. I don't want it, and it's not supposed to come to me.
Yeah, they were trying to send it to the lender.
Yep. Got CC'd.
Yeah, they were trying to send their pay stubs or something like that.
Stuff I don't want.
And so you asked about, does the state set the standard there? No, state doesn't ask me a question about that at all. My underwriter, now they'll, if they see me doing something that they're like, that's not quite secure, they'll start to scrutinize me. They'll be like, hey, you need to tighten up a little bit here. But it seems far and wide, and as much money as we're handling in this industry as a title company, that we are a big target. Yeah. And in the last let's call it 2.5 months, two of the largest title companies in the country were hacked. And it hasn't come out yet. They're publicly traded companies. They had to pay their ransomware attackers handsomely. We don't know how much yet, but I'm betting it's millions and millions of dollars to release their system. Well, one of them was the biggest title insurer in the country, has a whole family of companies, and you've heard of most of them, that they were out of commission for about 10 days. Even their agents below them couldn't even write policies because because the system was down. So it's a big target. We're constantly under attack. So you better take steps to make sure the information that we have is secure.
So from the outsider, remember, I'm a home seller out here. I don't know from data hacks and all this other garbage. And I know it's important, but how in the world do I ask? How do I verify that? How do I make sure? Is there anything I can hang my hat on?
When we're dealing with one of your clients, Glenn, first thing we do, we put that purchase contract in there. They're getting a secure email through a secure portal for the exchange of information. So we are establishing that one-on-one, you're only sharing this information with us. So it's kind of watch out for that. If you see that, we're doing the company that Good. You're dealing with is doing what they can to say that it's safe. But all of a sudden, if people are just sending attachments all free willy-nilly and things like that, kind of watch out and then scrutinize every bit of info you got.
Well, I'll tell you, we get your Qualia. That's the name of that software that you use? And that's
Correct.
Right. That's Qualia, free, right? Yes. You can get that anywhere, right? Free? Anyway, no, I know you pay a pretty penny for that. Right. So you're
we pay a ton.
And you put but that just speaks to the value that you put on data security. And your underwriter doesn't make you do that, do they?
No, we could be using an older software that doesn't even offer that secure portal, and no one's going to care. I mean, the underwriter will scrutinize us a little bit and tell us to tighten up, but nevertheless, no, people do not have to spend that money. But we chose to because of how secure it makes communication and how easy it makes communication.
And look, I get for the average listener that this is probably one of the drier topics we've ever talked about. But quite honestly, these are the ones that sneak up and bite you in the butt.
It's the money. It's the money part.
I wrote a piece about 6 months ago, and I quoted the FBI as saying that somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion with a giant B dollars worth of real estate money is intercepted by nefarious people every year. I thought that was like a total lifetime number. They're like, no, that's every year somewhere in that neighborhood. And that's just from sloppy data, leaving windows open that we shouldn't leave open, right?
Right. A local company in Columbus was a victim of over $1.7 million wire fraud. And the way it happened was the hackers found a way into the email of that company. They sat there and watched this escrow processor's email, and then they see a big fat deal come across. And that escrow processor gets emailed to him a $1.7 million mortgage payoff. And so, okay, put it in the file, get it ready for closing. A few days later, gets an updated payoff. Whatever, no big deal. Something changed. Maybe the borrower made a payment. They didn't notice that the updated payoff statement had different wire instructions on it. So they go to do the closing, funding pulls out that payoff. All right, we're sending it to blah, 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 blah. Well, they didn't know that the account was actually the hacker's account.
Yep.
So, and it got more elaborate than that because they were moving the money from the bank account through a currency cloud. And so, but they're only allowed to do so much at a time. So they were doing 50 grand a day, and it's going to take you a little while
to drain it. They were trying to drain it.
To drain it. So when they went back and looked, the hacker was still in the email, replying to emails for the lender, the lender was expecting the $1.7 million payoff. And the hacker's going, oh, sorry, we got a problem with funding. We're going to get it out to you right away. And they just delayed them and delayed them and delayed them. And the processor wasn't sending this, so he didn't even know to look for it. So they ended up getting some money back because they couldn't bleed the account out fast enough.
Well, when you've got that big of a fish on the line, you do what you got to do. Hey, real quick, if I told you that you could make more money and dodge a whole bunch of headaches the next time you sell a home, you'd want in, right? Well, let me introduce you to Living to Listing, the 10-Day Home Selling Transformation. It's our all-in-one online course designed to sidestep the most common problems that always seem to show up and cost you thousands of dollars or even kill the deal. As we've learned, the best way to solve a problem is to avoid it by prepping the home the right way. In Living to Listing, we take you through every step from a major decluttering party to the nitty-gritty of cleaning, repairs, staging, and getting those picture-perfect photos. These are tried and true strategies pulled from the trenches of my 2 decades in real estate, complete with scars to prove it. You get hands-on checklists and resources for each part of the process. And here's my promise. If this course doesn't meet your high standards, reach out and I'll refund you. You've got nothing to lose. Check out sample videos at livingtolisting.com and see for yourself. That's livingtolisting.com. Let me know what you think. So you're saying that if again, Mr. Joe Home Seller, when I'm selling, if I'm getting emails or text messages, God forbid, asking for sensitive data, their lights should go off, right? This is not cool. What do I do?
This is
in that moment. What do I do?
Just call the company and just say, hey, I got this email, and I'm going to say, I don't know what that is. Forward that to me real quick. Let me take a look at that, and then I'm going to go, that's bad. Good. And then you can usually go back and identify where the breach was, whether it was one of the realtors or whether it was the borrower or the seller themselves or whatever. Make sure you're using that secure portal to exchange sensitive information.
We get occasionally, because we do quite a few deals a year, occasionally we get a buyer agent will push back. Well, I don't know, this quality of thing's a pain in the butt. I'm like, listen, that thing's your best friend right now. So, just roll with it. I promise you, you'll get used to it and it'll be fine. And you couldn't spend more than 3 minutes learning how to use it. Well, why can't we just do this by email or fax or what? No, we don't. That's too vulnerable. So, okay, well, enough about that. On to service, because we talked about fees, we talked about security. My other big pillar when we are shopping for title services for our clients is service. And I know that just is such a generic term, but having worked with your team, and I guess I didn't intend to go here, but I will just tell you, we've worked with title companies that, let's just say, they don't want to talk to anybody except either the realtor or the lender. They don't want to talk to a human outside of the licensees. Is that normal within the industry, or is that something you guys take a different approach to?
Well, we take a different approach to it. Sure. Do we have emails and things that go out? Absolutely. But if we're not getting the information we're requesting or something along those lines, eventually you got to pick up the phone. It's set up in our system. I think we've stopped it at 3. So we're sending 3 requests to that seller to start their portal, then start getting, once the portal's established, let's start exchanging the information that we need. And then if we don't get that after that 3rd attempt, I'm going to reach out to, hey, Glenn, your seller on 123 Main Street just isn't replying to me. And I'm going to call them just so you know what's going on. And then we'll proceed to call them. But, sometimes they're skeptical of that email, or they're skeptical of me because they don't know me like they know you, or your relationship with them was already established. So, hey, sometimes hey, Glenn, you got to get them on board here for me, or whatever. They're not replying to anything. But you got to pick up the phone at some point in time, and that instantly is going to make that buyer, seller, whatever, okay, now that I see that email was legit and they know everything about the deal, they're involved in the deal, and Glenn told me they'd be calling or whatever, and so it gets the channel open that way.
So on the reverse of that, I'm Joe Seller, I'm at home, I've got some questions. Is it permissible? Do I have to work through email to work with you? Can I call you? Not you maybe, but can I call your team and maybe talk to somebody if I've got some concerns?
Absolutely call my team, but also call me. That's kind of the part I thrive on. I've got someone who's got an issue with something. If it's gotten to the point where they want to call us, they've got an issue with something. Call. By all means, call us. And my kids and my girlfriend will attest that I answer my phone way too dang much. But sometimes the people need reassured or need that voice on the other end to, okay, now I feel a lot better what's going on. So it's not going to hurt.
To your point, this isn't something people do every day. I'm Joe Home Seller. It's not like I'm out here, people move, 3 or 4 years, something like that. I might do this 3 or 4 times in a whole life. I might maybe more often, but certainly not enough to become an expert.
That's right. Well, there's a lot of mistakes that can be made that are too expensive. And you're better off doing it right the first time with the right professionals in your corner.
So if the service is there and the data security is there,
service being what it should be.
Yes. And
Yep.
if everything is above the line with service and security, then there's no reason on earth to pay a fee that's higher than what you should be.
That's exactly. It's, again, only one part of that is set by the
Right.
state. The rest of it, charge whatever we want,
Good.
and that's where they get you.
So let's go back to me, Joe Fisbo. I'm now for sale by owner. I don't have a realtor. Now, I got the during part. Like, we covered all that. But what about before
Yeah.
I actually put the home on the market? Or is there anything I could do? Like, is there a reason to call you other than to shop for closing services? Or are there things I can do that you can help me with?
So if you're doing a FSBO or doing one of your listing packages, there's I have a relationship with a photographer, so you can go on my website, pick and choose an a la carte photography service, whether it be just home photos or drone or floor plans or 3D tour or whatever it is. And if they want to market that FSBO for professionally on Zillow or wherever they're putting it, that'll help. I can help with contract prep. Like I said, I have that pet attorney, and they can prepare a contract for me, so that's where we can help as well.
Excellent. Okay. So you guys, you're there to support whoever's in the driver's seat, whether it's the listing agent or whether it's the seller themselves. You're there to backstop
Correct.
them with resources and maybe some advice. I noticed on your website, what is that web address, by the way?
www.associatestitleinc.com. www.associatestitleinc.com.
5 more times. No, I'm just kidding. And I know you can get a quote on there, right?
Easily. You can get a quote easily on there. You can deposit earnest money on there. You can reach out to us on there. There's a chat feature on there that pops up right on my phone no matter where I'm at. Little bing goes off, and that means someone's in there asking a question. And it's always being monitored.
Okay, so if now I'm going to shop. So other than what we've already talked about, are there any other questions that as a home seller I should be asking in terms of about the title company?
Well, how accommodating are they? That there's some of the biggest ones in the country are the least accommodating. You're doing a closing in their office between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. They have to have a week's notice to do it. No flexibility whatsoever. And so that's a piece of what you should be asking is, can you accommodate, my elderly mother? I don't want her to, she's selling this house and moving into a assisted living. I don't want to have to bring her out or whatever. We'll come to you. And a lot of these companies, these bigger companies, they kind of feel like, well, people just send us business, so I don't need to do anything else for the business. So they don't accommodate. Right. They don't go out of their way to
Understood.
help.
So sometimes, you have the best intentions. You make up your mind, I'm going to use this title company. Well, then the bullets are flying, right? The deal is coming and the paperwork's going back and forth and there's negotiating. And all of a sudden, one of the parties says, I'm using this title company. Or in some cases, it's baked right into the contract. The escrow services will be provided by. And it's filled in already. As a seller, what do I do with that?
Well, if it's in the contract's the contract. You're stuck.
Okay.
It's if you agreed to a price, you've agreed to a closing date.
I'm negotiating.
You're negotiating. Well, you can get out of it that way. It's everything on that contract is negotiable. Sometimes they put the title company in MLS, I've had agents of mine, a lot of my agents, because they want the quality and control that I offer them. They'll write my name into the contract, and some agents don't even look at that part. And all of a sudden, they got a contract that says Associates Title is doing the title and the escrow. And they're like, well, my buddy Bob over at so-and-so title was going to do it. And we had it on MLS like that. And they're like, well, you had it on MLS that the price was $200,000. I'm only paying you $180,000. I mean, this contract trumps it all. So that's one way around it, is to control the deal, is to counter out the things you don't like. You're going to count, if they're saying inspection period is going to be 20 days and you want it to be 10, you're countering that out because it's not what you want. Counter out the title.
So it's like any other term in the contract. As long as it's a legal term, they can. So a seller could say, hey, no, I'm not comfortable. I want to use this title company.
Absolutely.
Okay. So they do have that.
Counter out anything.
Occasionally we get deals with some extra paperwork attached that says that the agent owns a chunk of, or they work for XYZ brokerage, and XYZ brokerage literally inside the building has their own title company. As a seller, any advantages or disadvantages to using the one that's under their umbrella?
The one that's under their umbrella is called a joint venture or an ABA, or there's several terms for it. So basically, what has happened is the brokerage has bought in to a piece of the title company, and then the title company in turn cuts the profits in half and pays them to the broker or whoever it might be that's the partner in the title company. And usually in those cases, those joint ventures or ABAs, their fees are significantly higher, so you're going to pay the price that way. As far as advantages, other than maybe a little communication between the realtor and the title company, because that title company works for the realtor essentially, but also that realtor's captive business at that point. That title company is impressing them with money. Well, I don't know that the quality will be there like it would be if you went out and found an independent.
Okay, well, that certainly, makes sense. So if we can flip back to the title search for a second, obviously stuff comes up. And most of the time when we see these come in from the title company, there's not a huge surprise. There's a mortgage, there's this, and I check with the seller, is this all like exactly what you expected? 99 times out of 100, they say yes. Let's talk about that one time when they're like, does this happen?
Of course. Now think about a lot of creditors out there. When someone fails to pay them, they're going to file a judgment against them, and then we'll see it during our search. Can you imagine if the seller has a common name?
Oh,
let's say Michael Brown.
John Smith.
John Smith? I say Michael Brown because that's the one that sticks out to me, because we did one here in Franklin County and there was like 104 judgments filed against Michael Brown, and we got to go through and make sure that none of them are our seller, Michael Brown. And so, the biggest pain in the rump one is the state of Ohio. For whatever reason, the state of Ohio, I still have to fax them a request. Fax.
That's that little machine I heard about with the paper that goes through it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I faxed them this request that has to have an original signature on it. Now I can't e-sign it, can't do any of that. And then it takes them upwards of 4 weeks to answer. But the seller or whoever the party is, they can go right on the website, pay it, and send me the receipt. So you're like,
really?
I can see the information's, you guys are definitely storing it digitally, but you're making me send you this communication like in this, let me send you a smoke signal or a telegram. I don't know how else we can
dust
slow
off
it
the
down.
pony, man. Send them out. So is that like the most common thing that comes up in a title search is, a lien that may or may not be yours or a creditor that may or may not be yours? That's like the number one?
That's exactly it. That's number one. Well, what we're seeing a lot right now is we go to pull the payoff or we do the title search and there's 2 mortgages on there. And the seller's like, well, I only have 1 mortgage. What are you talking about? And then you say, well, did you do any kind of forbearance during COVID or did you do anything like that to delay your payments? And they're like, well, yeah. I'm like, that's not free. They file another lien against it. It's usually by HUD. And so all of a sudden they've got 2 mortgages they got to pay off from the place.
So you get to deliver a lot of good news. Going back to me, I'm going to sell my house with or without an agent. Is there anything I can do before I put the house in the market so that I don't run into this stuff? Like, do people do that? I know we do pre-inspections sometimes. Do we do pre-title work?
Yeah. With my customers, my agents, or someone that contacts me, I'm going to run the title search ahead of time. If I know if it's a weird property or something like that, I might kind of be like, hey, let's wait till we get a contract on that. But on your typical one, I'm like, what are you expecting to see on there? And if they say, oh, nothing, just checking to see if there's any problems. And so usually that one, I'll do a title search prior to and just have it ready to go when the contract comes in.
Got it. So that's probably not a bad thing for a seller to poke around on at least. Well, we're all about avoiding potholes over here at the Ohio Property Group because that's what, it's one thing to get a deal together. It's an entirely different thing to keep it together all the way to the end. The love's getting low and you're hitting all these potholes at the end. And so the more of these we can avoid before we stick that for sale sign in the yard, the smoother we know. And to your point, the better value we're going to present to the market, and that's going to show up in a price.
That's it. You're right. You're going to provide peace of mind to a potential buyer.
Yeah. This is a little bit of a one-off. We got, last year, I think we had 7 different boundary disputes. The mortgage company ordered a mortgage survey, and then the title company said, hey, by the way, that fence is on the line, that driveway's over the... Does this come up a lot, or did I just hit the luck of the draw last year?
Comes up a lot, especially the older the neighborhood. I live in German Village. Last year, I did one where this house, the roof, the eave of this roof was over the property line. But the kicker was the house next door that was a little taller was over that property line. So it was both houses were across the property line on this deal. But when you're a little more common one, the most common 2, fence and driveway. Those are the most common ones. And so when that comes up, I'm going to I'm going to insure over it on the lender's policy, and it will be an exception to coverage on the owner's policy. Because if I was covering that on the owner's policy, a week after closing, the new buyer's going to come and say, hey, I want a new fence, or I want a new driveway, whatever. But then we say we will insure over it on the lender's policy. Have you ever seen a lender foreclose on a property because the driveway was over the property line? No, it doesn't happen. So that's why we're insuring it over it for the lender. We'll get it to the closing as long as the buyer is okay that we're not covering that on his or her owner's policy. That way we can still get the deal closed.
Man.
But yeah, driveways, fences,
always fun. So you do get a little bit of spice over there inside the lab.
Oh yeah. There's something new every day.
You talked about being thick-skinned as a realtor. I mean, I kind of like to mix it up with people in a good way. Like if there's a spicy situation, I'm going to be the guy in the middle of the cloud of dust because that's where I like to be. But I would think as you get closer and closer to the finish line, the pressure is skyrocketing so that even the tiniest issue now all of a sudden is under a giant magnifying glass. So do you find that to be true?
Well, I had one the other day. So people went and applied for their loan to buy the house, went through that whole process. They get to the table. Well, actually didn't get to the table when we send them their closing documents, because I always like to send them to them prior to closing and let them review them. That way they can line up any questions or whatever. We send them the documents because the lender was a little bit behind on when they should have sent us stuff. We get the stuff the evening before a morning closing, and all of a sudden the buyer doesn't like how they're entitled. They want their middle initials or they want their whole middle and name. So the next morning hey, lender, we need this to happen. So, all of a sudden it's just a flurry of activity to get those documents corrected by the lender and then get them to us and then us to present them to the buyer. And you do, it is high pressure. And then there's so much money involved that people can get a little gun shy about mistakes. And I'm okay with that. I want my staff to scrutinize it twice, 3 times, whatever, to ensure that we don't make mistakes.
I told you earlier that there were 2 questions we get all the time. One was about title insurance. Can you guess? And we did not talk about this before. Can you guess what the second one is? Like the number one question I get, if I'm going to get a question about a closing statement, this is going to be the one. That was the first one, is what's that title insurance doing on there? And then the second question I get from sellers, probably,
who's paying for that?
No, they know. It's the property tax proration.
Oh, got it. Yeah. Property tax proration. It's almost we're trying to put together a smooth animated video to convey this to people.
Where do I sign up?
I had a loan officer last week. I had a loan officer that did a deal with us back in July of last year, his own personal deal, and then he gets the first half of 2023 tax bill in the mail. Why didn't you guys pay my tax? This guy's been doing this for 20 years. And I was like, Joe, that the year on that tax return is 23 and that's payable in 24. And I was just beating it. I'm like, no. And then, I'm sorry. Never mind. I understand. And that's a 20-year vet, in this business. Tax prorations are a difficult one to explain, but here's the shortest version of it I can give. I sit down and when I'm doing that settlement statement with them, and I sit back and say, this is a property tax proration credit from the seller to you, the buyer. When in Ohio, we are always paying taxes 1 year behind. So this year, when your escrow account or you are paying those taxes, it is for last year. So that's why you're being given a credit from the seller for whatever portion of last year the taxes weren't paid.
This came up, and I joke about my math skills, but I'm actually not too bad at it. This came up in real estate school, and I remember spending what I consider to be a disproportionate amount of time in that class, going over and over and over and over this from the instructor to the agents. Eventually, they just move on and say, I'm going to get those questions wrong on the test. It's fine. Then 2 of my adult kids who work for us now decide to get their real estate license. You're not going to believe this, but halfway through real estate school, they're calling me up. Why can't I get these property tax prorations? I don't know. So I wrote a huge chunk in my book that was all about property tax prorations. There's no short way to explain it. That's as close as I've heard, though.
Serious veterans of the industry that still call me, hey, man, this can't be right. And you're like, how much are their taxes a year? When are we closing? Do that math. And they're like,
we do we do a net sheet on every offer that comes in on one of our listings before we send the offer breakdown, and we process it down into one page from 30 for the seller. They get the whole thing, but they still get the one page of my notes. They get a separate sheet, the net sheet. It's an estimate of what we think they're going to walk away with if this deal goes all the way to closing, nothing changes, just like it's written. And that whole net sheet came out of property tax prorations. If it hadn't been for property tax prorations, I probably wouldn't even do a net sheet. I would put it on a napkin and send it to them.
Because they could do it's simple.
Easy.
Simple math.
And what's funny is in the beginning, when you're talking about all the numbers that go with a typical real estate transaction, it's not like it's this massive percentage of it. But boy, at the end, when they see that, it's like all these red flags. It's like every question mark they've ever had gets focused into that one number. So.
Biggest one, I paid taxes. You're like,
yep. I mean, we laugh about it, but
it
causes a lot of anxiety out there for buyer and seller, and agents and lenders.
Yeah, buyers get the credit of it. I always say that, hey, when you're buying, you make out like a bandit. When you're selling, you take it on the keister. But
that's one of our tactics, I should say, is we tell the seller, hey, if you have the settlement statement from when you bought the house. And many of them do, because it wasn't that long ago. They'll be like, or I'll have it because they work through us. I'll say, look, right there, line whatever. That's the buyer. That's the seller when you bought it, giving them to you. So paying it forward, I guess, is how we look at it. So, look, as we start to wind down here, thank you, first of all, for a great time. I hope everybody learns a lot. But if you had to take all of this stuff that we've talked about, or maybe something we haven't talked about, and give the seller, whether it's a investor who flips a lot of property or somebody who's selling their first home in 20 years, is there one kind of piece of advice you would say, look, if you do nothing else, if you take nothing else away from this podcast, make sure you do this?
Let's say you're selling a property, call your title person on a Saturday and see what happens.
Why?
Chances are they won't answer. I do. I'm providing that accessibility and accountability to go with security and service and pricing that I don't think many places offer. And it's kind of like I feel like I'm a little bit on call. Yeah. As realtors or sellers or buyers or whatever, things are still moving on the weekends, and all of a sudden have the people that are going to handle all the money and the whole transaction they're out of the office. Well, maybe you can find a title company or a title rep that doesn't leave you hanging on a Saturday or Sunday.
It's rare. I mean, if we're dealing with a lender, and to your point, many times even a title company, not yours, of course, if we see an activity scheduled out between now and closing lands on a Friday afternoon before a Monday morning, we move it because we know it's just going to sit there and get moldy. That's a great call out. So thank you for that. Anything personally or otherwise that you're working on that you want to talk about?
No, it's just I'm constantly trying to attract people like you, Glenn. I want to show you my value, and in turn, you help show my value to your clients. And hopefully that's a smooth explanation to make. And when everything's in line, I hope it should be, it should make it an easy job for you and me to get that client to use my company through all the things that we have to offer and how secure we can make them feel.
Well, you survived the '08 crash and you're here today to talk about it. So I'd say you're doing a few things right. There's no doubt. And I can just tell you from our perspective, we see a pretty broad spectrum of service and security and savings, and fees from title companies, and I didn't pick your name out of a hat. We are very much aligned in the way we do business. So for what that's worth.
Perfect.
If people want to say hi to you, connect with you just through your website?
Sure, they could go on the website, use the chat feature, or feel free to text me or call me anytime. That's the quickest way, 614-419-2418. Try it out. Call me, text me on a weekend, whatever. If you got a real estate question, fire it
Good
out.
deal. What's that web address one more time?
www.associatestitleinc.com.
Okay, that's
Associates with an S, Title Inc., like incorporated.com.
Got it. Well, Ryan, it's been an absolute delight. Thank you. I know that we all learned a lot today, so I appreciate it, and good luck.
I appreciate you having me on, Glenn, and I'll be talking to you soon, and let's do some more business
Sounds
together.
good.
Thank you. All right, thank you.
Huge thanks to Ryan Phillips for sharing so much about the title process. I know I got a little smarter today. Hopefully you did too. Before we go, just a quick reminder that the Talking Realty podcast is brought to you by the Ohio Property Group, a family-owned brokerage where we help hundreds of home sellers save millions of dollars and avoid countless headaches every year. Check us out at ohiomlsflatfee.com. If today's conversation sparked a new idea or answered a burning question, please don't keep it to yourself. Share this episode with friends and family who might benefit from it. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this podcast, Talking Realty, for more insights, tips, and stories to help you navigate the world of home selling. If you have any questions or topics that you'd like us to cover in the future, we'd love to hear from you. Just head over to talkingrealty.com and say hi. Thanks again for tuning in. Until next time, keep making smart moves in your real estate journey. This is Glen Whitten signing off from Talking Realty, and remember, you can sell it. We can help.